So today I'm just going to act like you guys are the girls in one of these sessions. And if you have any questions throughout, you can just you can raise your hand as either question for a speaker or a question as a girl. It's completely up to you. Okay. So usually Gina or Sarah, are you guys going to be one of these?
Either volunteer or staff.
Okay. So there's usually girls in the contact person there, which is fantastic. And usually we do the fourth talk of the series. And I believe, do I still follow safety? The safety first. Okay. So we usually touch on what they've done the previous week just to kind of refresh. So I'm just gonna, here we go. Right?
Excellent.
All right. Hi everyone.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good.
Great. I'm Dr. Morgan, Caroline Morgan. I'm an OBGYN. Now, does anybody know what an OBGYN is? No. Okay. So OBGYN are two short forms for big, long doctor words. So OB stands for obstetrician. Now, that's a doctor that gets to deliver babies, so it's like my favorite part of my job. And then GYN or gynecologist is a doctor who gets to take care of women. So I get to take care of women your age, I get to take care of women your mom's age, even your grandma's age. So, and I think I have the coolest job in the world, and so I'm very blessed to be able to be here today with Girls in the Know to talk to you about puberty. So today, the goal of today's talk is we're going to talk about medically accurate information. We're going to talk about puberty, the changes the body undergoes, proper medical terminology for the changes. We're going to go over proper medical terms for our body. And we're going to go over female anatomy and male anatomy. And then if you guys have any questions throughout, please just raise your hand. All right. So in the review, and you guys they've got this.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So we talked about the OBGYN part, the review. So this is when we refer to the last session. So we just said before we get started, let's take a minute to discuss last week's session all about safety. And then just ask the question. This is just to encourage involvement and to kind of reiterate stuff from the previous session. So who has something to share about activity or discussion? And you'll find with the girls, you'll get a really loud group or you'll tend to get a really quiet, shy group. But as soon as one person starts asking questions, it's like, shoot, everybody can ask questions or they'll start whispering each other. And also in these sessions, they have papers. They've got little cards that they can write anonymous questions on that you can collect at the end, and that tends to be a huge hit. You end up usually, when these girls only talks, you end up with usually a stack of cards like this. So now let's get started with today's session. Let's talk puberty, talk about the medically accurate information. So this says trusted, there's no trusted adults.
We kind of use the school personnel in the ground.
Okay.
Kind of
Oh, you do? Okay, very good. So that would be the trusted adults under explain reminder from last session with the trusted adults. So first things first, we're going to talk about proper names. So everyone, raise your hand if you're comfortable saying the word nose. Nose. This is when I get them involved. So this is really start to nose. Okay, raise your hand if you're comfortable saying ear. Ear, then I go on say knee, and then I'll be like vagina, and that's exactly what happens. And then I'll say penis, and the same thing happens, or breasts, and I'll be like, well guys, guess what? These are normal medical terms for our body parts, and by the end of this session, we're going to know exactly how to refer to the proper parts of our body. Because believe it or not, I've been in practice for 13 years now, and I still have grown women in my practice that don't know the names of their body parts. It's not a vajayjay, it's not a hoo-ha, it's not a pee-pee. So by the end of the day, we will know the proper terms. So. Then we go to the true or false worksheet, which is at the back of your guys' pamphlet. And so this is the first activity we do with the girls. So this is when they kind of huddle in groups. But we also, depending on the size of the group, this is when we start the telephone game. So if it's a really large group, sometimes we'll divide the group in half and just do it on one half or two halves. If it's a small group, it's no problem because you can just do the telephone game. So, who wants to start telephone? Who knows how to play telephone? There we go. Perfect. We have a volunteer. All right. I'm going to start the telephone message here while you girls work on your true or false activities.
Do you want us to keep going?
No, why don't you, Gina, why don't you tell me what you heard?
Caitlin and Kristen are throwing a 10th birthday party.
All right. Do you remember what the original statement was?
Caitlin and Christy are throwing Courtney a bowling party for her 10th birthday.
Very good. So the actual statement was Kayla and Christy are throwing Courtney a surprise bowling party for her 10th birthday. You guys are going to be shocked at how this message gets changed and the things that they come up with. Like I've had boys that get invited to the party. I've got, the message will change completely. So then I say to the girls, okay, girls, what happened from the message from here to here? It changed. Very good. So who can tell me what a rumor is? So this is when all the hands shoot up. Okay. What's a rumor?
Something people say that might not be true.
Very good. Does anybody know what gossip is? And then hands shoot up again, and then they all talk amongst themselves. So after they've given their input, I say, you're absolutely right. So girls, in this day and age, you're going to hear lots of things. You hear things through social media, you hear things from TV, you hear things on the playground. There's different ways that rumors can be spread, whether it's written or verbal. So when you hear things, and now we move to the think poster, which actually found this poster one of the early sessions I did at a school, and I copied it down and I made it part of our program, which is kind of cool. So then I say, girls, so when you hear things out on the playground or amongst your friends, I want you to think before you pass that information on. T, is the information that you have, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it even necessary? And K, is it kind? All right? And then usually I leave this up for the duration of the talk, usually off to the side so that they can see. And sometimes they write it down. So then what we do, once we've talked about rumors, we go through the true or false worksheet. So you guys just go through, we won't do it today because in the interest of time, but just go through and I pick somebody, and usually there's a girl that's going to volunteer and say, me first. So I just start with that person and then go around the room. If no one volunteers, just pick somebody, usually. And you'll get your shy ones. And a lot of times if they're shy, I'll pass them, but they're usually pretty good. The true or false, there's some long words in there, like pituitary gland, because that's where the question is, where does puberty start? So I just make sure that, everybody says pituitary and then they know what it means, and it's kind of like a fun 50-cent word for them to learn. And I tell them it's going to come up later on in the talk, so remember it. So, next thing is we're on the focused body changes part. So I say to girls, all right, can anybody tell me what puberty is? So this is usually when we get hands and you kind of get their input. And they'll say puberty is when a body changes. And so then I kind of go into, well, what kind of, if they can't really come up with that, I say, what kind of animals are we? And they'll be like, we're mammals. And I'll say, okay, what do mammals do? Well, they breathe air. Finally they get to babies, right? So I'm like, perfect. So what can an old animal do that a young animal do, or a lady can do that a young girl can't do? So then you get drive, that's a common answer. And then someone will say, have babies. So then we talk about, So the whole point of puberty is the changes that a little girl's body undergoes so she can become a reproductively active animal or mammal. So I just kind of break it down into the basic sense. And as you guys do more of these talks, you'll kind of get a handle of, because I'm not following this, I'm kind of using this as an outline, but sometimes I don't steer away from it, but I just in my own mind, I've got my way of doing things, and so I incorporate this. So the more times you do it, just the more it'll just flow with you. But involving the girls is huge, because that, it starts a discussion. And a lot of times, and don't be alarmed at this, a lot of times in these presentations with the girls only, you might get completely derailed, because they'll ask questions and you end up going off on a different tangent. And sometimes it'll be completely beyond the scope of the talk, and you're like, well, let's just, that's something you should discuss at home with your, parents or something like that. So don't feel bad about saying that. And if they ask a question that you're uncomfortable answering, or it seems political or religious, and you don't really, we're just here to present medical facts. I think as long as you keep that in your mind, it won't be any problem. So they talk about puberty. So I use our diagram to help me discuss puberty. So here is our cartoon diagram. So then I'll say to the girls, okay, girls, where did puberty start? Now they're going to know the answer from doing the true-false. So they'll say, the pituitary gland. I'll be like, yes, the pituitary gland. So then I'll say to them, does anybody know what a hormone is? And I'll get various answers. And then I just kind of simplify it for them and say, girls, I want you to think of hormones as messengers that travel throughout your body. So what happens with puberty is the brain, the pituitary gland, sends some hormones down to your female organs, and that's how, sends some signals, and that's how puberty starts. So the main hormones, and it's obviously, I would say beyond their level, but I still use the appropriate terms. I just say follicle stimulating hormone, and I say luteinizing hormone gets secreted from here. And they talk to the ovaries, which make a couple of other hormones, estradiol and progesterone. And then to give the girls an idea, because obviously they look at this and then they get distracted because they're like, whoa. So I say, well, if you had a little window right above your pubic bone, that's where you'd see your female productive organs. So I kind of incorporate the physiology part with the anatomy part here. So I say, so if we were to cut ourselves like this and look in here with the camera, what we would see is the uterus. So this big thing is the uterus. And attached to the uterus are two fallopian tubes, and they're attached to two ovaries. And the opening to the uterus is the cervix, and the cervix opens into the vagina. And then I tell them, if you were going to take a mirror and look at your bottom, this is what you would see. And then I say, girls, how many holes do we have? And this varies from 1 to 3 to 2. So finally, once they agree on something, I'm like, 3, perfect, 3 holes. So then we go over the external genitalia for them. And so I kind of digress a little bit and do the anatomy portion. So then I go back and talk about the hormones. So then I say these hormones start to talk to other parts of our body. They start to talk to, our hair follicles. They start to talk to our breast tissue, and that's when breast development occurs. Then we talk about the Tanner stages. So then I say, and the girls will have, we hand out a form that looks like this, that just has a pictorial depiction of the Tanner stages. And I don't go through them stepwise because I think it's easier for them to just look at them and kind of see. So I just say, Dr. Tanner, was a British pediatrician who came up with stages of development with boys and girls through puberty so that they know what was appropriate and what was happening at appropriate times. So they have that to look at. And then usually I say, as a general rule of thumb, once you start to see breast tissue or breast buds develop, you're going to have a period usually within 2 years. Because that just kind of signals the hormones are starting to work. So,
I have a question.
Yes.
So everything that you have right
Mhm.
there, is that like everyone's kit? Do I
Mhm.
have that?
Yes.
And
Yeah. You will have
Okay.
that.
All right, so we would keep that here, and then every time a physician has a what? Okay, got it. All right, sorry.
No, that's good. So, and then I'm thinking. I feel like, I don't see the hormone chart in here. I thought this was where it was.
Page 12.
Oh, it's with the period.
I see the hormone chart mentioned.
Male anatomy. Hold up the female.
Yeah, it looks like it's after menstrual,
Hold up the male.
right at the end of menstrual cycle.
Oh, at the end of period. Okay. All right. So maybe sometimes I mix that up a little bit. So, okay, so we get back to talking about the hormones. So the hormones talk to the ovaries make hormones. Now they talk to the inside of the uterus. And the inside of the uterus has a lining called the endometrium. And what the hormones do is they cause the lining of the uterus to build up. And when a lady has a period, that's what happens when that lining sheds. Now, to kind of give them an idea about a uterus, what I'll tell them is I'll be like, has anyone seen a pregnant lady? And usually they're like, yeah, I see. I'm like, how big are their bellies? Look at they're out to here. And I'm like, yeah. I said, that whole thing is your uterus. How cool is that? So when a uterus is not pregnant, it's super small, like smaller than my fist. But it can be that big because it's a big muscle. So we talk about the hormones and how they communicate with the inside of the uterus and cause the lining to build up. And then when the lining builds up, and you can use this to kind of show them this, and this is a cross section of endometrium here. So I say that the hormones talk to the ovary, then one dominant follicle on the ovary ruptures and it releases an egg, and that egg travels down the fallopian tube into the uterus, where if fertilization does not occur, then I usually ask them, I was like, what happens to all the lining that builds up? And then they're like, well, it has to go out. And I say, well, what is that? And then they get around to, oh, it's your period. So this can kind of show that here. So there's the menstrual phase, and then ovulation, the progesterone-dependent phase, and or luteal phase, and then the shedding out again. So, and a lot of times too, the girls will come up and want to look at this really close, like afterwards, or so. So far, so then I kind of do a recap. I'll be like, we've talked about body parts, we've talked about hormones, we've talked about our, I said, what do we need? We've talked about periods, and then I say, now what's the next thing we need to talk about? And so this is when we move on to, I say, we need to talk about protecting our panties, because periods just don't call and say, hey, I'm going to be there tomorrow. So then we move on to taking care, the focus would be taking care of yourself during your period. We talked about healthy hygiene. And this is when I hand out tampons to the girls. Oh, you guys, I forgot. So they do, after you do the Tanner stages, you do the matching exercise. And during the matching exercise things, usually I just walk around the room and help the girls out if they have questions. The matching exercise is on page 4. So, and that kind of triggers, that gives you some of the names that we use when we're discussing the anatomy too. So, all right, so back to periods. So this is when I hand out tampons to everybody, and this is where everybody's like, ah! So they think they're dirty even though they're all brand new clean. So usually you have a box of tampons, and so then I say, all right, girls, where's the tampon go? And there's silence. I'll say, all right, how many holes do you have? We have 3 holes. Okay, which hole does it go in? The top hole, the middle hole, the bottom hole. Then they get it right. So middle hole. So tampons go in the vagina. So I just make it fun for them, and I use the words a lot. Like I use vagina a lot. I use, just so that they're comfortable and they realize I'm comfortable with it. And it's not a big deal. So we take this. So everybody's got a tampon at this point. So I'm like, girls. So here we go. So this is the applicator. What happens is we insert a tampon into the middle hole, and you push up on the skinny part. And then the tampon sits right here in the vagina, and this is where it absorbs period blood. All right? So, after I do that, we have a little demonstration to kind of show them exactly how absorbent a tampon is. So then, we just do this, and then show them, and usually they're like, so that's the tampon. So I'm like, girls, okay, so what's the most important thing I want you to remember about putting in a tampon? Very good. Very good. I know, it's simple. And how long does it stay in? So about 4 to 6 hours. I'm like 4 to 6 hours. So very important. So what happens when you take out your tampon, girls? Because this is important, right? They're all in school. Garbage. Do you flush your tampons down the toilet? No. So now sometimes here you'll get questions like, what if I get my period in the middle of class? Well, almost every school has a school nurse, so just let them know they can just go to the school nurse, and they usually have supplies. If not, another thing you can talk to the girls about at this point too is maybe having a period preparedness pack where they can have like a pad, a tampon, a little packet of wipes, and a clean pair of underwear. That if they're around their period or they think it's going to be coming soon, they can kind of have that in a cosmetic bag in their backpack. So that's another thing, kind of just equipping them with that knowledge. So we talk about periods and we talk about tampons, and then I talk briefly about why we don't leave tampons in for a long time, because they can get a serious blood infection called toxic shock syndrome. So that's the reason we don't leave tampons in. That's the reason we don't sleep with tampons in at night. And make sure that you take them out. And then most recently I had a young girl who actually was putting in 2 tampons at a time, so I had to educate her not to put 2 tampons in at a time. So I was like, oh, that's something I probably should let, these girls know too, because, to me it sounds, don't put 2 tampons in, but they might think, oh, maybe I need 2 tampons.
Caroline, do you not do the pad or the panty liner?
Oh, sorry, I do. I'm sorry. I just don't hand them out.
Okay.
So then, yeah, I'm sorry, I even have them up here. Thank you. So then you're like, that looks like a diaper. And you're like, anyway, so if you don't want to use a tampon, you certainly don't have to, but there are pads and panty liners of all different sizes, depending on how heavy your flow is. So then I kind of use this time to talk a little, when I say how heavy your flow is, so I can talk about, your period flow can be bright red, it can be brown, it can be really dark and look black, and that's all normal spectrum of flow, because sometimes they don't know kind of what to expect. I say if you're like going through a pad, more than one pad every 2 hours, you should let your mom know, and probably should see a doctor to talk about that, because that's really heavy flow. Then we talk about the symptoms that go, well, I kind of lump it together, so we talk about the physical thing, then I kind of talk a little bit about PMS, and I might be jumping around a little bit, but I'm like, and a lot of times girls have heard of PMS, so we talk about the symptoms that come with periods, the moodiness, you might cry, you might not know why you're crying and just be upset, you might feel bloated, you might feel crampy, your bowel movements might change. Those are all normal period things. I think the biggest thing is to emphasize, at that point, the variation in different people's cycles and just normalize it and be like, you could be this, you could be that. Then I say girls that are like exercise a lot, super, super skinny girls, they might not get their periods for several years. And that's normal for them. So now I turn this into, I'm like, well, now we have to talk about boys, and they rolled their eyes. And they're like, yeah! So, all right, I said, and then I tell them they're in luck because I'm a gynecologist, so I don't know too much about this. So, what I do is I just pretty much go over the anatomy. So I'm like, so if I was a boy and they cut me in half, this is what I would look like. Now, boys have testicles, and I just kind of walk it through just like I did the female one. So I'm like, boys have testicles. Now, their reproductive organs are on the outside. Women's reproductive organs are on the inside. So boys have 2 testicles, and inside the testicles is where they make sperm, which is their reproductive cell, which they know from the previous matching exercise. So when a boy goes through puberty and starts to make sperm, sperm travels down this tube here, the vas deferens, and then into the urethra, and then comes out the glands of the penis. So then I say, how many holes do boys have? And then they realize there's difference between boys and girls. 2 holes, right? So we say semen comes out here. I said urine also comes out here because it's attached to the bladder, which this is where we pee out of. And but I tell them that urine and semen and sperm do not come out at the same time, just from because it's different mechanisms, because they'll always ask that question too. And then oh, here's the bottom picture for the boys. So they just have the picture of the anus and the pelvic floor muscles there. So, or you can just illustrate it there. So that's boys. So yeah, boys is pretty quick. So, and then I turn it around because I'm like, all right, that's enough boys. And then they're like, whew, thank goodness. So, all right. So now sometimes you guys, you're going to get so involved in some of these talks, you might not make it through your whole program. So I mean, don't be alarmed because you're really there for the girls' education. So, and some programs, and usually what I do when I go to the schools, I ask if it's okay that we talk about sex and reproduction. Because I mean, I can't remember. I mean, maybe one program I've been to, I had to.
Permission slip, so
They do.
It's all okay.
Okay. Very good. So then I said, all right, girls, so now we're going to talk about what sexual intercourse is. And essentially, I just spell it out. I said, it's when, what do we have here? I'm going to explain exactly how sperm can get to the egg and fertilize the egg, which can make a baby. This process occurs through sexual intercourse, or simply referred to as sex. So we just kept it very basic, very medical. Sexual intercourse is when a man inserts his penis inside the vagina and sperm gets released, and sperm can travel up into the uterus. And if an egg is present in the uterus, the sperm and the egg come together and fertilization occurs. So then that's sexual intercourse, which can give you a nice segue to sexual contact. So then we talk about touching, sexual contact's any touch with private parts, genitals, mouth to genitals, genital to genital, not to be taken lightly. And then we talk about safe touch. I think a lot of them have heard from previous. So we bring up safe touch, and it's a term used to keep people safe in regards to their body. Only certain adults are allowed to touch your genitalia. These are your areas covered by your swimsuit or underwear. And then we use the pants is copyrighted. So we use the mnemonic pants. So P, privates are private. A, always remember your body belongs to you. No means no. T, talk to your trusted adult about secrets that upset you. S, speak up and someone can help. So meanwhile, the question basket is being practiced or passed around. So we finished with the sex talk, and then I say to the girls, does anybody know what triplets are? And then they're like, yeah. And I kind of modified the little joke at the end, because my partner has triplets. So I said, well, my partner has triplets, and he's got 2 boys and a girl, and his girl came to him one day, met him in the driveway, and was like, Dad, what's the meaning of sex? And now my partner, who's a gynecologist, he's been waiting for this question because she's been asking questions around the topic, and finally she came out and asked the question. And so he looked at her and he said, well, Chloe, and he went down and he gave a talk very similar to the talk that I've given to you, and she had this puzzled look on her face, and when he was all done, he was quite proud of himself. He looked at her and he's like, now, why did you decide to ask me about sex now? And she looks at him and she's like, well, Dad, Mom said dinner was going to be ready in a few seconds. Well, anyway, so there you go, tension icebreaker. All right, and then we go into the focus for the week. So.
And then I'm enough chant we do.
Yeah, and the other thing I emphasize to the girls kind of at the end, I'm like, girls, you get one body in this life to take care of. Who's going to take the best care of it? And they all raise their hands, me. I'm like, great, I want you to remember that today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, this is the greatest gift you get, and it's your job to take the very best care of it you can. So then a lot of times they'll come up, so then that'll be the conclusion. A lot of times, once Gina or Sarah does the administrative stuff, a lot of times they'll come up and ask you questions. Oh, and I'll go over the question basket if there's a basket of questions.
And surveys, you kind of help them.
And surveys, yeah. So, all right.
Do you want to show the hormone chart?
Oh, of course. And after talking about it several times, we forgot the hormone chart. So after I talk about the boy anatomy, I know it's inserted in the period thing, but so we talk about hormones, and that's why you're having all these crazy feelings, because this is what female hormones do. You can see they go up and down, and all sorts of all over the place. I was like, and then I'll be like, and then this is a boy.
That's
so
so funny.
So there you go. So that's pretty. So you can interject that, you know, after the male anatomy, or you could do like right after your period talk, because we talked about the hormones kind of going up and down then. So thank you for the reminder, Sarah. All right.
So do you,
So unfair.
There's a few things that have come up that,
Yeah, because
I mean,
we've
I
had
think
some
we've
same-sex
had-
parents, and we've had.
Yeah.
or even they've asked about abortion, they've asked about contraception. So we just kind of say, this is a little bit out of the scope, and if you're ever just, you get that gut feeling you're not sure, that's what I would default to. This is a little bit out of the scope of girls in the know. This is a perfect thing to take back to that trusted adult or your own doctor to ask.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is hard. This topic does get, can have a lot of different questions.
Yeah. Fortunately, in the school setting, a bell is going to ring. A bell is going to ring, and they're going to have to leave. So it ends up, it's a lot of information to deliver, and it is a compressed time period with the girls, because I think usually it's just like 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, every now and then we've had an hour and a half, I think, but that's been rare.
Our typical is about 60 minutes.
Yeah.
We're pushing for 60 to 90.
Yeah.
So 60 is kind of our minimum now, but sometimes it is 60 with all of it. So we hope for 60 to deliver the curriculum, and then another 10 to 15 to do the anonymous questions while they're doing the surveys. Because in your session in particular, you're generally the last. Sometimes that doesn't happen because of scheduling, we'll notify you. But there's a post-session survey for puberty and then a post-program survey. So they can have double the surveys in your session.
And then a picture. They usually have a picture too.
And certificates and shirts. So we try to get a little bit longer.
Is there a typical number? Like, what's the range and number of
Oh my
girls?
gosh.
Or does it just vary?
It does vary, but we try not to get it too big. Remember that one time I did it at Bush Middle School, and it was I had a whole lunchroom.
That's what you
There was like something like 50 girls in there. And the thing is, I don't think I made it through half the program because there were so many questions. Yeah.
We'll let you
So-
know if it's gonna be an exceptionally large group, but
Yeah.
normally it's around 20.
Yeah.
30 people.
20 to 25 students. Carolyn, have you done the I'm Enough pledge yet with a group?
No, I've done the one. What's the other one?
The Promise to Myself?
Promise to Myself. Yeah. So.
Now we've kind of shifted over to the
I'm
I'm
Enough.
Enough pledge. Do you want to go through that? and show
Sure.
how it is?
That's on page 17 of your curriculum. And it's at the very end, right before the surveys. So it's a chant that we do, every session. And then at the, since it's
For their t-shirts as well.
yeah, and they'll also get these buttons. And so we have them stand in a circle and kind of with the trusted adults in a circle or around or behind. And then they say it out loud in a circle, kind of as a promise at the end. And it's I am enough, who I am is enough, what I do is enough, and what I have is enough. And it's really powerful because they're in a circle and they've done it. This is their 4th time and they're graduating. And so.
Oh, good. They say it every session.
They do.
Oh, that's
The first
awesome.
3, they're in their seats and they say it. And then the very 4th one, we have them come in a circle.
Oh, that's great. No, I haven't done that yet.